How's it going, guys? John here, and surprise, surprise, another video within the week itself. I know I said that uploads might be a little less irregular here on the channel, but we just got a new ban list for the English side of the game, and I thought we should talk about it because it's actually really interesting. So for those who are out of the loop, recently we actually got announced a new V Premium ban list for the Japanese side of the game. And that list seemed like it was widely catered to a Japanese TCG audience. So going over it, obviously for standard and for premium, there were no changes. But then we look into V Premium, which a lot of people believe is the problem within the game itself. I would like to argue there are a couple problems within the rest of the metagames, but that's a different video, a different type of discussion. So going over the V Premium side of the things here, you have Hamiel, which was completely banned. You have Meep, which was put to 1. You have Percival, who has been choice restricted to 1. And then you have Gurgwit, which has been unlimited to 4 copies. So right off the bat, that list to me definitely caters more toward a Japanese-focused audience. Them having more problem decks being Gold Paladins, Angel Feather, and Melody, actually. And I don't believe they contended to Luard and or Prisms being a problem child within their V metagame. So that's why I personally believe they kind of fixed it in that way, for them, at least, for them. And a lot of people thought, okay, we might adapt that, and if we did, then there would obviously be clear outliers as to where the overall metagame would fall. However, Bushiroad decided to give us a whole English ban list, which is crazy. If memory serves, they really haven't done that since, I think, G era. Because I know after G, I think it was like during the V era, they decided to like conjoin restriction lists together, which was nice for global players. Obviously, like there is still, I would think, a little bit of a problem being 2 separate ban lists because there are adamant JP players within the community as well as English players within the community itself. So having 2 separate ban lists, I don't know, it seems a little problematic. I can understand too if you're within something like an Asian country and you have the 2 options. But for something in like a European and an American, or North American rather, side, I see it as less impactful, but I can completely understand as to why something like this can be a little bit restrictive. But guys, this list, I'm all for it, especially for the English side of the game. So let's go over it. So the English side has some very similar, if not, I think, carbon copy restrictions when it came to the Japanese side that we saw earlier this week. However, we got a page 2, which is amazing. So they did a choice restriction for us between Coutier, the grade 2 Prism, as well as Ellie. And then that was for Bermuda. And then for Shadow Paladins, you still have the Nemain choice restrict, but on top of that, you also have the Charon choice restrict with Luard. So that to me is really good. It's amazing. First impressions right off the bat, right? For us, yes, I agree that Angel Feather was definitely a problem, and Hamiel, very good in terms of banning it. When it came to something like Meep and Melody, for us personally, it wasn't as much of a problem. I believe within the BRO season, there was only 1 Melody that topped within all of the 3 regions, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't have been a problem child going forward. The deck is still very powerful. I personally actually play Melody, and I can definitely see it as a more of a high rolly deck, yes, but if you gave it the chance, it makes ridiculous numbers, and the consistency of it is actually really good with Meep. If you draw into Meep in your opening hand, you're set up for the entire game. So hitting Meep to 1 is actually really detrimental for the deck. It can still function too for those who still want to play Melody, just not as consistent. You're going to have to play a few more grade 2s and probably replace the Meeps with Sednas, the grade 3 searcher. But other than that, yeah, it really does put a big hindrance into the deck, which is good. It stops a problem for the metagame. And then the choice restriction for Gold Paladins and restricting Percival and then unrestricting Gurgwit, while it is detrimental, definitely, I think in the eyes of Bluish Flame players, more so core players, it definitely hurts core players the most. Percival itself is just a really stupid card, in my opinion. I play against Baldwin, who, oh my god. The card is dumb. That and the grade 2 are definitely really, really powerful cards for Gold Paladin as a whole. And then I'm sure he's going to be happy that Gurgwood is unrestricted. So he's going to have a lot of creative deck building when it comes to that. And I'm sure he's probably going to playtest that maybe this weekend or the weeks following. And if I can, maybe show off a deck profile with the new restrictions and maybe get his 2 cents on the matter. So very nice on that end. That's really good. And now let's actually talk about the English side. So Coutier, right? Very good in Highlander and very good in Prism Highlander. So those are 2 types of archetypes or 2 separate decks that both abuse the card to a very large extent. Then when it came to the grade 2, it's a good consistency nick, but I personally don't think it solves the issues completely. Along with Ellie, restricting them all, just saying right off the bat in terms of prisms, does get rid of a few problems, albeit the quote-unquote looping of the shields back to your hand, and then essentially just having a lot of shields, 40k shields, always plus, no minus. So yeah, it does definitely hurt the deck, but I don't think it's gonna solve the prism issue outright, just looking at it from a Bermuda perspective, because I personally think Aqua and Lizolet are still 2 problematic combos, and I don't think this particular hit just nerfs the deck completely. It definitely hurts it, but when it comes to Prism as a whole, I definitely still see it being part of the metagame going forward into the Springfest meta. I just don't know by how much of a large extent. I still think it's a very powerful deck. I just don't know by how much. Only time will tell. I just think, yeah, it's still gonna be there. And then lastly is Luard and the choice restriction with Charon. The main restriction was already there, so that already there was already good, because for those who played within the 1 week that it was allowed, that stuff was ridiculous. But yes, the choice restrict for Charon and Luard is actually really good in my opinion. The overall dumb combos you can do with like the Leafall combo, and then you can call the Charon with counter charges and gives you the free card advantage, and then you can just set up from there and essentially just not care about what your opponent does is kind of not fun for your opponent. It's fun for you, but not for them. And I personally see it being still good, very similar to Prism. It doesn't hurt the deck outright. It's a good call, but it doesn't completely stop the deck from doing what it does. I do think if you are being smart about it and you damage deny Luard players at a particularly right moment, they can't pop off in terms of card advantage, and they really do have to contemplate now without Charon how they're successfully going to be able to do their counterblasts, because they can't just counterblast willy-nilly and do the things they want to do without there being some sort of repercussions, because they would have Charon to fall back on and then countercharge with it. So I think it's a good hit. It doesn't nerf the deck completely, but it does put a hindrance into their plans, which is great. And yeah, overall, I think this is actually, while it's not the most ideal hits, it's actually very good. I will take this list 100% over the Japanese list, because we got both. And I do think it kind of stinks that for the adamant JP players within the community that they don't get this extent, because I'm just going to be honest, looking at this over here, this chart, you can see that for us, the first page didn't matter as much. And if our metagame in the past had any sort of reflection as to what the future metagame is going to have for V, at least for the Japanese side, I can definitely see there being a bit of a hindrance there. I mean, yes, it can be argued that if you really want, local card shops can exclude certain restriction lists from the JP side of the game and say, okay, if you're playing in my shop, you can play the English restriction list, that's totally okay. But at the same time, you know, it really doesn't help with like making the game a global game, if that makes any sense. It doesn't help that there isn't a sense of trying to bring the two communities together for like one global metagame. Obviously that can't happen with there being future releases, or at least the Japanese side of the game having a large release schedule and window ahead of us, and I think they even have some exclusive Japanese cards too. but neither here nor there on that front. Yeah, overall though, I think only time will tell when it comes to how the metagame is going to develop as a whole. If I had to guess right off the bat, I'm just going to say that I still think Prism is going to be there, and I still think Shadow Paladin is going to be there. Probably not to as much of a large extent. Grand Blue, definitely going to be there on the chopping block, actually. I should put my 2 cents on that. I don't know if not hitting Grand Blue was a right call for them, because I do see it being a problem within the future. Night Rose is still a very powerful deck. I think if anything, they could have maybe done a restriction for the Skull Navigator, but other than that, I still see it being a possible problem within the future. However, I say possible because if we're thinking of something like Vanquisher, Vanquisher actually has a very good Night Rose matchup, being able to bind the drop zone. So I definitely see Vanquisher now being able to rise into the metagame again, which is great for Vanquisher players, so good on you guys. What else? Probably Messiahs too. Messiahs is actually a really, really good deck, guys. The big beat stick is nothing to scoff at, okay? It's a very scary card. What else? Yasui, I can see Yasui also doing really well. Yasui has some really, really nice multi-attack combos. And then when it comes to future releases, or at least what we have now, I don't know. It's hard to tell. I'd have to do some playtesting to see for myself. But right off the bat, I can definitely see something like maybe Cecilia Reverse being really good, Himiko being very good. Himiko Reverse is actually really nuts. I love Himiko Reverse. Guys, it's so much fun. Oh my goodness. I would love to do a deck profile on Himiko Reverse. It's so good. Oh man, wombo combos for days, boys. What else? Maybe Kagero? Not really. I mean, okay, being honest with you guys, Kagero's fine, but it didn't get the exact push it needed to be. The cross levels of stupid, which is good because the cross was a problem. It's not anymore with Heal Guardians. I don't think so. Yeah, all right, so now I feel like I'm rambling, guys. Anyway, that's all I'm gonna say. Overall, not a perfect ban list, but it's a good list. I approve, Bushiroad. Good job. And I'm actually now looking forward to playtesting within the V Metasphere, and we're gonna see where everything falls. But what do you guys think of the ban list? Let me know in the comments down below. What do you guys think of me actually uploading again in 1 week? Kind of crazy, right? Yeah. Anyway, yep, that's gonna be it for me, guys. One last thing. Guys, if you're in the New Jersey area, this Saturday, we're going to be live streaming our locals free fight format. Check us out. And not this Saturday, 3:30, maybe 4:30. I'll keep you guys updated on Twitter. Link in the description down below to our Twitch. But you can also catch us here on YouTube. Final Turn Gaming, boys. Locals. Hopefully, there's a snowstorm coming, but hopefully that won't stop us. We'll see. Anyway, yeah, that's about it, guys. Deuces!